Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here at the Hollywood Museum in the heart of Hollywood, and the museum is housed in the historic Max Factor building on Highland Avenue. Our guests today are writer, director Mary Agnes Donoghue and actor-writer John Posey. Writer, director, filmmaker Mary Agnes Donoghue was born and raised in New York. She opted out of university to follow a career. She's been attached to big projects with major names and major stars like her projects of The Buddy System, Beaches, White Oleander, and she's working on a novel, and she's already produced, written, and directed an award-winning film called Jenny's Wedding. So when you left school, where did you go? What were you going to do?
I can only describe, there was about a 10-year period that I would call my checkered past.
Checkered past? Checkered like your pants,
exactly. Right. Mainly, I just spent a lot of time falling in and out of love. That's what I did. That's what I did with my life. And I
From high school on?
High school on, I did.
So here we
have
have
the early, young, foolish marriage, abandoned that, just, it was a
So we have a beautiful
kind of
Irish girl, right?
A reasonably attractive Irish girl.
Who's being taken in by other Irishmen?
That's right. No, all kinds of, it was crazy. That's how I ended up in LA, actually.
Oh, but, how did you get to LA? That was my next question.
I was in San Francisco, living in San Francisco, and there was a job at the County Art Museum working for a friend of mine who ran the publicity department. And I was fleeing a love affair.
But what were you doing? Were you working at all?
Yeah,
were you waiting on tables?
No, I was working. I always had jobs, worked as a secretary, worked as, whatever came up. And not for, then there were periods of time when I was married. My first husband was a lawyer, so I didn't work.
So you didn't work.
So
you were like a 19, 20-year-old person
exactly.
not working.
But I wrote. I always wrote.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. But I never thought I could actually have a career writing. But I was terrified of it.
In high school, were you writing?
Always,
were you in English?
Always, yeah.
English classes?
Yeah, no, I'd always sort of be in the sort of advanced classes. I always wrote since I was a little kid.
And when you were writing, were you keeping a diary? Is that what you were doing?
No, I'd write stories. I'd write all kinds of stuff. I just loved to write
But when
essays.
you got to LA, then you were writing press releases.
Well, I was writing press releases, but then I was writing
right?
my own stuff. I'd sort of struggle through, halfway through some dense, difficult novel. And then I always loved movies, and there was just a point where I thought, I hit a certain age, and I realized it was time to get serious. If I didn't get serious then, it would never happen.
And you were still working at the County Museum?
No, that was when I was living with Joe Good.
I know...
That's why I know
Mary Agnes for years.
That's right. She knows everything.
I know Mary Agnes for years, and she's always been connected to the art world.
Yes.
And to the movie business world, really.
Right.
But
the art world was my first connection to anything in Los Angeles, and those people have remained my friends to this day.
They stayed the longest.
They stayed the longest in my life.
Business.
Yeah, I like that. They're more interesting.
It's interesting because the art world always looks to the movies and how exciting it is, and yet the movie people are the ones buying the art of today, right?
It's really true. It's really true. And those friends were the closest friends over a million years.
The artists.
Oh, yeah, forever.
It's this mutual love of what the other person is doing and envy in a way, isn't it?
I suppose. Or just recognition that somebody's doing something. For me, it's just an intense curiosity about something that's totally different.
In your respect, but with, say, studio heads,
right?
They want to be associated with the artist.
Oh, no, definitely, they do. They do. and putting together collections, and
Exactly.
it's a big part of establishing who
But
you are.
But when you started and you were living with Joe Good from the County Museum, did you meet him at the County Museum?
Yeah.
Those artists weren't big names. Those artists weren't people that...
They were and they weren't, though.
They were to us.
No, but they were. That whole period, I think, was one of the most interesting in LA. I really do.
Have you written anything about that?
No, actually, the only thing I ever wrote was an introduction or an essay, really, for Billy's last show at the Frank Parish Gallery in New York, and I'm quite proud of it, actually, because it really captures that period, the late '60s and the '70s in the art world in LA, and there was a kind of energy to it and a...
It was.
It was fantastic.
I've always said that, and she's talking about Billy L. Bankston when she talks about Billy's foreword to a catalog at the Franklin Parish Gallery in New York, and he's also opened here on Boyle Avenue in East LA. But when you were a part of it, it seems to me that you really were a part of it. You met everyone, you knew everyone.
Yeah, no, it was sort of intimate.
And that's
thing.
the kind of background a writer needs.
But also, when I moved out of that, and when I was on my own, suddenly there was this point where I really, and I always wanted to write, I always loved movies. And a friend said, I had this idea for a screenplay, and he said, well, write it. And I did, and I sold it.
But how could you write a screenplay? Did you know the process?
No, I'm a quick, in terms of form.
Yeah, because it's a form, right?
It's not difficult.
It's not.
In terms of form, it's not difficult. It's a certain length. If you can either write in 5 acts or 3 acts. But the rest of it, it just came naturally to me.
You've written screenplays.
Yeah.
And you've produced.
Yeah.
So screenplays, tell us what you've written screenplays. Buddy System?
I wrote The Buddy System, Beaches, White Oleander, Veronica Guerin.
And those were all with like major stars.
Major stars, yeah. Yeah.
And did
Which
someone...
is the only way you get them made.
Okay, here's the other thing. White Oleander was a book, right?
Yeah, I love that book.
I love that book, too.
It's a great book.
But how do you adopt that book to a screenplay?
That was a tough one. And what thrilled me is Janet Fitch, who wrote the book, loved the screenplay as much as I loved the book. Yeah, and that's rare. Usually novelists will be really upset because you have to change it. I mean, it's a different
What do you do?
thing.
How do you change it? And what do you see? Because the book is so visual. To me, it was so visual.
Well, to me, the way I saw it, it was Dickens in L.A. So that's what I wanted to capture in it. So you couldn't have every episode in that girl's life. You couldn't possibly do it.
No, so what do you do?
Well, you pick the ones that you think will lead you into the next phase of her life, and you concentrate on those. And you try to do it in a way where you're not losing the heart and soul of the book, if it's a good book. Beaches, I know this is going to be aired, was not my favorite book on the face of the earth. And so I just went off and did what I wanted to do.
And it was a big hit,
No, it was a big hit, but I felt no obligation to the book. White Oleander, I felt a real obligation to the book.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Does the screenwriter work with the author of the book?
No.
Never?
No.
Not way?
No.
Oh, and the author doesn't have any say-so, right?
No. But the thing is, what it would be terrible, because if you're writing a novel, you have your own view of something, and you can't. You've got to let the screenwriter.
Okay, you're writing a novel now.
I am.
Are you writing it with a character, with an actor in mind?
No, not at all. I'm writing it as a novel. I'm thinking like a novelist. And there's a weird thing. After I directed a movie, then you go back and you start writing again. And I couldn't write for almost 8 months. I couldn't write anything. And I realized I was thinking as a director. And then I had to think, I'm going to make this as hard as I can for that director. I'm going to write. And then you're writing. Because you're not trying to...
We've talked about screenwriting, and we've talked about directing, and we've talked about producing, and you've done all of them. And with Jenny's Wedding, which was an award-winning film that you've gotten so much publicity about and so well accepted, you did all 3.
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
It wasn't easy. First of all, the producing part, I had a brilliant partner who, it took us forever to get that movie made. But she was just Michelle Manning. I wrote the script. I just wrote the script.
So you didn't write the novel. So it wasn't like you were adopting.
There was no novel. It was no novel. It was an original screenplay, and then Michelle Manning loved it, and we got together, and it took us a while.
How'd you cast it? Did she help you cast?
And then a brilliant casting director, Gail Levin. joined us, and so the three of us produced it.
Which is great because it's all women. I love the idea that, you know, you've like used women for everything. And it's about a woman, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Tell us the story.
I mean, the heart of it really is the mother more than, the story is, you know, very conventional, not conservative so much as conventional. You know, people who want everything to be done a certain way. They don't want to stand out in a crowd. They want to look like everybody else. They're, and a very conventional family in Cleveland who have three sort of children, really tightly knit family, and the oldest, most straight, perfect girl is a lesbian, which they don't know, but she's lived an openly gay life away from her family. And she decides she wants to get married, and that means coming out to this family and then watching this incredible trip for all of them to get to the point where they accept it.
So it seems like a mother might be easy to cast because you can get a mother with simpatico.
Except that, no, what's interesting is because the family had initially, and I like this movie a lot. It's a really honest portrayal of these people. It's not vilifying them. It's not, you know, but their first reaction is they don't want any part of it. And a lot of actresses wouldn't do it because they thought it was unsympathetic. It would make them look bad if they played a character who was initially thrown by the idea of having a gay child marry.
Like the mother would be?
Which she would be, because they live in this neighborhood. She knows the people, what they're going to be saying behind her back.
Right.
You know, everything is going to change.
Oh, that's interesting that an actor wouldn't want to play those roles.
No, and I found it very frustrating. Sometimes I wanted to say, you're an actor.
Exactly.
This isn't about you.
Exactly.
You know, this is about this character.
Exactly.
But then I lucked out and I got the most brilliant actress, Linda Emond.
Oh, she's great. She's a Broadway star.
She's big on Broadway, yeah. And she's amazing. And her performance in the movie is just spectacular.
She's a great actress.
Yeah,
so
she
you
really
have
is.
a real person actor.
Really do. And she got it. And she manages, she can do a strange, because I find even the darkest aspects of life funny. And so it's humor. There's a lot of humor in the movie. And if somebody just got too, you know, solemn about it all, it wouldn't work. And she got that. She can do this sort of amazing balance of, you know, humor and the pathos and wit.
So where did you hold the casting calls?
Oh, wherever, you know.
Were you
wherever.
in New York? Were you here?
Oh, sometimes I'd meet with people in London. When I was in London, you know, it went on for quite a while.
And
then we had it all pulled together with a different cast, actually, with Robin Williams playing the father instead of Tom Wilkinson. Marcia Gay Harden was playing the mother. I mean, it's wild.
Totally different cast.
Totally different cast. And then personal things happened in my life, so I had to walk away from it. And then after that, I came back and we started again from scratch. And Robin Williams by that time was doing a television show, so he couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it.
No.
And if he had done it, you would have had a problem there probably at one point.
He's brilliant, and I loved him. He was just great. But I think Tom was the right person.
Tom Wilkinson's
Tom
a
was the
wonderful
right person.
actor. Where was it set? Where did you shoot?
In Cleveland, Ohio.
And how long did that take? Were they happy to have you in Cleveland?
They were. Actually, I love Cleveland. I picked it because I love it. It's sort of the perfect American suburb. You know, Cleveland Heights, sort of beautiful old trees, house at the turn of the century, and it was once a very wealthy city.
And how long were you there?
So we were there for about 2 months.
Oh.
But we only took 18 days to shoot the movie.
So you had a great movie, and everyone loved it, and now you're writing a novel. And do you think you'll direct your own novel or write your own series?
You know, actually, I don't think of it as a movie, but it would be a good movie, actually.
See, I knew there was something in the background, I think you have characters written. Just give us a quick synopsis of what it is. Yeah, because you told me before, and I didn't understand it.
It's about people washing up in L.A., which is such a transient city, for a variety of reasons. They never expected to stay. And it's searching for home. What do you think home is? Once you grow up and you leave home, you're fixed in your head as this idea that there's this place that's home. And it really doesn't exist. Everything changes. You lose people. Things change. You know, you never have that kind of illusory certainty that exists in your childhood. And so finally, it took me about 2 years to figure out where home was. And what I decided was, I mean, it's not heavy-handed and, that's what you're going to read in the book, but I think home is where you stay while you're waiting to go home.
Well, you're waiting to go home, but you're always
That is
thinking of home.
You're
That's
always
exactly
thinking there's
right.
this place that you can never get to.
Exactly.
But actually, you're there.
I think we decided that. Thanks,
You're
Mary
actually there.
Agnes.
You're welcome.
And thanks for watching. Don't go away, because John Posey will be right back with us. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here in the brownette or brunette room of the Max Factor building. This is the original building, which is historic, and it's now changed into the Hollywood Museum. And we're really lucky to be taping in this room. Our guest is writer, performer John Posey, who grew up in the South and graduated from the University of Florida. He was discovered performing on stage in the 80s and brought to Los Angeles. Since then, you've seen him on TV in Criminal Minds, 24, ER, Boston Legal, and on the stage, many, many stages, and in films like Legendary. And for sports fans, he's created a syndicated radio series for CNN called A Lighter Look at Sports.
Right.
Are you still doing that?
I did it while I was living in Atlanta, and then when I came out here, I stopped it. But I sat down with a friend of mine, Jerry Hauser, a longtime actor, who started in Slapshot in the summer of '42.
Oh, right, yeah.
To redo it as a two-man team. It's now called Why We Love Sports. So we're sitting in that trying to decide. Every time we start to go out, radio seems to change so drastically, but we redid it with two voices playing off of each other.
So why do you love sports?
Well, it's a metaphor for life, I think, which is sort of what this play is about. So,
Oh, that's interesting, because did you always want to act? Or did you
I
want to
think
be a
so.
sports person?
No, I think I was a closeted actor and wasn't sure I could make a living, so I pursued journalism and thought I'd be a sports guy. And as soon as I got into it, I thought, well, that's boring.
When you came to Los Angeles, what were you going to do? What happened for you? What doors opened?
Well, there's an actual story. There's somebody from ABC came, saw me on stage, pulled me aside and says, we think we want to put you in a TV series. Come to LA, but first come to New York. Throw out a monologue and we'll see if our development people want to sign you. I did. That monologue became this one-man show that I've been doing for the last 22 years.
And tell us the name of this, in the name of?
The name of the show, the name
Yeah,
of the TV
what
show.
came out of, oh, the TV show,
Well,
right.
the TV, they put me in a TV show that I was later fired from, no fault of my own, it happens all the time. But that show's been around forever and it continues to sort of play globally, so it's a...
Is it Teen Wolf?
No, that's my kid.
That's your kid.
My kids just started. This show was Full House.
Full House.
They were looking for a guy to play the lead. They found me in Atlanta. Not that that's what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
but who knows what you want to do when you get out here. And that happened. And then somewhere along the way, you know what happens. You're suddenly the odd guy out. You're not the guy that knows the right people. And that's really all it was about. So I thought, wow.
So political, right?
I know. So I thought, I don't think I want to be here. So I went to New York and worked. But this little monologue I did that everybody at ABC loved and actually signed me to a contract largely based on that, I think, the performance of it. I went to New York and I spent a while and I wrote what became this one-man show that I've been doing now for 22 years, toured the country with.
Okay, and what's
Sold
the
the
name
film
of
rights.
that?
It's called Father, Son, and Holy Coach.
That's the one that I thought you were talking about. And that started out of Comedia,
Came out
in
of
a
some
way.
of the characters I created in Comedia.
Wow.
As well as this little monologue that I wrote. And I thought I'm not a fan of comedy clubs. I don't think I work very well that way. So if you put me in a theater environment, I'm much more comfortable.
Oh,
with
it's
that.
a different feeling than the
People
comedy
can't heckle you.
club.
They can't heckle you from a theater.
Right. So, but then when you got here, you started doing a lot of TV roles.
Yeah, when I got back from New York, after this series fell apart, and that happens a lot, I found out. I've been on the other side and watched people come on my shows and later get fired, and you feel horrible for them. But I clearly knew what I wanted and didn't want to do, and it led to somewhat of a career as a writer as well. Came back from New York, and I've had a steady career in TV, some in film, some on stage. And this piece, I ended up touring for years, did it here, and then put it down for a long time while I pursued other things. And all of a sudden, my two kids are adults now, and it struck me that let's do it together. You guys produce it, I'll put it back on stage. And we seem to have gotten a rave response. So what I finally did this time was reach out to some heavyweight producers and decided to take all the bells and whistles. You know, with a one-man show, I could do it in your bathroom and it would be entertaining. But if we can put everything in it to make it a Broadway, or I should say off-Broadway worthy
that's what
production,
I was going to ask you about.
that's what we're doing by bringing in Terry Hanauer to direct and Raquel Lerman to produce and some of the top designers in town.
And it's at the Odyssey.
And it's at the Odyssey.
Which is a great theater.
Yeah,
we
so
love
now we've
that.
got a beautiful set, and it's a one-man show. I play roughly 17 or 18 different people. But when you do what they want to do, like let's pump up the projection, the sound, the lighting, the design, everything, so you'll think you were seeing 20 people on stage, and that's what we've done.
We're back to sports again, right?
We are, but it's also universal. It asks the question, and I should start off by saying it's a raucous comedy. Until a certain moment toward the end when you realize that, you know, there was a lot of pathos.
There's right.
Yeah,
Depth.
there's a lot of depth to this father, but it's I think it asks the question, are we defined by our past or by our present and future? That is not only true for athletes, but true of people in our industry, where somebody might say, well, you're only as good as your last project.
But you've been doing it for 20 years, and you're still wondering what the answer is.
Yeah, well, I think I've found recently, maybe because I'm a little more older, a little more gravitas, did a little tweaking to the story, I find that the story is really relevant right now. Maybe even more so. When I first wrote it, I was thinking, I want to show my skills as an actor. Now suddenly I'm more attuned to the writing of the piece.
Well, up until this point, you've been writing screenplays.
Screenplays, some TV. I'm a produced screenwriter. I've written or sold 7 or 8, gotten 1 made, have 1 pending. A little bit of TV. Legendary was a sports film.
Let's talk about Legendary, because that was like a coming of age.
Yes.
You wrote it.
Yeah.
Did you perform it? Did you
I
act
did,
in it
and
too?
so did my son Tyler.
And did you direct it?
I did not direct it because that's not my forte. I feel much better watching somebody else do that.
But did that come out of
That came out
In
of
the Name of the Father?
No, that came out of true life experience. 2 brothers, high school wrestling in Oklahoma.
Oh, you mean it was some? Oh, it
Yeah.
was
something
another
that,
person's.
Yeah,
I
something
see.
that happened to me entirely, and I wrote a whole script based on it.
I
Had it
see.
sold several times again, back and forth, and finally it did get made.
It got made.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe it came out of your experiences and it was part of your story.
It was the centerpiece of that movie came from something that happened to me in high school.
And then we're talking, and then that
this is
part
something
is in the
entire-
play. That
Part of
little
that is
center
in the
part?
play too. Part of that's in the play too.
Okay, tell us the story about the play.
Father, Son, and Holy Coach, I think it's about, we all know those guys who wish they had a do-over in life. And maybe they're going to try to live vicariously through their sons, whether their sons want to participate or not. So it becomes a story, you've heard the term helicopter parent?
Exactly.
It's the parent
because the
that's-
kid drops the parents drop the kid.
And then they hover, and they hover,
And
and
they
they
hover,
hover,
right.
whether the kid knows they're hovering. In this case, it's a dad who thought maybe he fell short of his own goals, and he wants a do-over in life, and you really can't do that through your kid, because the kid's not there to live your life, it's his. So having said that, it's pretty funny. What happens is quite hysterical, again, up until a moment. And I've had a lot of guys say, man, you just told my life story. And I didn't know that. I just thought it was partial to me, but apparently I hit on it.
But you've been doing it for all this time. Okay, so then was your father an actor? Did you follow
No,
in
he
any
was.
foot-
My dad, so this story is a composite of several people. My dad was an academician.
Oh, he was an academia.
He was
okay.
a political science professor. He just passed away last year. A professor of history, political science, college guidance. But sort of what drew me to write this was that he used to think he was somewhat of a failure and could never quite figure out why. Because so many of his students would come to me years later and say, your dad changed my life. He was the
Right.
best teacher I ever had. And we would think, how weird. Because he used to talk to us as if everything he did never worked. And that's sort of the impetus. That's what got me to sit and chase this conversation.
You have a son, Tyler Posey,
Yes.
and he's a TV star too?
He's a big TV star. I think everybody
Was he
under
playing
21
Teen Wolf?
yeah, he is Teen Wolf.
He is Teen Wolf.
And so if anybody under the age of, I think anybody in America under the age of 24 probably knows who he is.
MTV, right?
It's MTV. He had a nice film career prior to that, made movies with J-Lo and Robert.
Did you put him in? Did you
Well,
put
you
him
know
in
what?
all
Yeah,
that?
I would never do that unless he didn't show a real desire and a skill. And at a very young age, he began wanting to come on stage with me. He wanted to
Oh,
come
he
on the
did?
set with me, and he would ask questions about lighting and blocking and all those things.
Really?
Yeah, and so I could tell that's where he was headed. I have a younger son who just now is thinking about it. Like most kids, he's 21. Tyler's been in the business since he was 7.
Is that, so Tyler really
Yes,
has been right with you?
Yeah, if you ever saw Made in Manhattan, which is a popular film starring Ray Fiennes and Jennifer Lopez, he played Jennifer Lopez's son as a 9-year-old kid.
So there, we're back to politics again. I mean, because you knew people and and your kid was around?
Yeah,
or?
I think I was able to get him in. I was
Uh-huh.
able to get him in or get agents, but he's a kid who had some sort of innate skill, listened to direction very well, which is what young kids have to do. But he's also made that transition from young child actor to adult actor. He's now 24.
But he's not acting in this because you're the only one on stage.
On stage,
what is
it's
he
just
doing
me.
with this?
He produces with me.
He's producing with
Yeah.
you. Okay. So are there projections? How do you play all these different characters?
I morph into them.
Okay. How do you do it? Do you change fabric?
No change of costume. I never leave stage. The whole show's at
Lights?
84 minutes. It's lighting. It's physicality. It's simply becoming somebody else through sort of a physical morphine, and it's not even that. It's more facial voice and things like
Is
that.
it? Like you would be yourself, and then who else
Yeah,
would you
like
play?
like I could be myself talking to you right here, and then I could say, "Well, I'm gonna tell you what now. I love the pink in this room. I'm not wild about the lights," and you just sort of delve into these
But you're
different.
telling the story. Each person's telling the story as it goes along.
Yeah, and there are at least, I think I probably play on live about 15, 16 people. Some of them are recorded. We're having phone conversations going
so
back
you
and
have
forth.
you have lights, music, projections, and then you change your roles like that. And Terry Hanover.
Terry's done a couple of one-man shows, and basically what their strength has to be as a director is to help make sure I morph from one to the other so it's very clear. Because sometimes after a while, you kind of forget that you've done this posture for this guy, so you have to do something.
I see.
So
you
it's
have
posture, it's physicality, it's voice, it's facial.
I see.
And it's also, coming from the South, what people will talk about is the great Southern storytellers,
Yeah, really.
where you might sit on a porch and tell these fantastic tales that we know have been embellished every year. And that's sort of what happens here.
So do you think this will be a film?
Well, you know, when I first opened this in 1993, Sony Pictures bought the rights that night. That night. It never got made. Some of the things don't. They bought it
Because
2
they
weeks.
loved it, right? We're going to make
Yeah.
a film with it.
Yeah. And there was some interesting stuff going on with one-man shows. Chaz Palminteri sold A Bronx Tale literally out the same week.
And he did it just like he did it
Did
on
it just like he did it.
right?
And, yeah, we were like right here at the same place.
Right.
Universal bought his, Sony bought mine. We just didn't have the right producers within. They weren't sure what the story was, and eventually the rights came back to me, sold again. I've got them back to me now. Now I have access. At this point in this climate, it's doubtful that a studio will jump on this because sports films, especially football, and there's a little bit of that here, they're a little bit hard to sell overseas, and Hollywood depends on overseas.
Oh, I see. Right.
So if this movie were to get made now, chances are it becomes more of a smaller budgeted hit outside the studio system, and I've got people approaching me for that. So maybe, finally, it'll get made, just not the way I had
But the
envisioned.
thing is not like a big thing, but a nice, independent,
I think so. And
well-made,
yeah.
interesting story.
And there's an audience for that. It just has to get
I
done a
know.
little
We
bit
love
different.
to go see those kind of
Yeah,
pictures.
when you find them, they're little gems you find, and you go, boy, I'm
Exactly.
glad I found that. Maybe you have to find them on Netflix anymore or on Amazon,
I don't know about that.
which is fine with me. It's okay. I never wrote this to be considered a film. When Sony approached me
No,
the
but
night I
now
opened it. Yeah.
now it seems like it would fit beautifully.
It would. And I know that in this climate we're in right now, that if you tell a bit of an uplifting story about, you know, a family, a little bit like Blind Side or Hoosiers or Rudy, some of these films that are in the sports world that have done well, there always seems to be an audience that wants to see those. It's just not as big as the one that want to see what Hollywood's pushing right now, which is more of the sure hits.
But you know, you have to make films for them, and you
Yeah.
have to go
Somebody
on
does.
stage for us.
Somebody
so
does.
go on stage for us.
Yeah, please come down. I think you'll appreciate both the writing and the performance, and you'll probably say to yourself, he's told a little bit of my own story. There'll be some element of that.
That's what connects with the audience, and you
it
connected
does.
today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching John Posey today, and thanks for being with us. Keep writing to JAQUINN1 at AOL.com. Bye.